Drifblim reminds me a lot of Exeggutor. The reason is that Exeggutor is the most annoying Pokemon to face when you're doing a solo challenge, at least in Generation 1. But then when you pick it up and you use it yourself, you're thinking, I'm going to be able to be annoying to all the AI now, they're going to hate me. And the answer is no, you're just still going to hate doing the solo challenge with Exeggutor. It's always bad. Either it starts with terrible moves like Barrage and Hypnosis, or it's using terrible moves like Barrage and Hypnosis against you to waste your time. I genuinely just don't like seeing Exeggutor in solo challenges. And I think the same is true for Drifblim. This thing is a nuisance to go up against because of its typing, Ghost Flying. It also has a great ability, Aftermath. But that ability is essentially useless in a solo challenge. So today I'm going to be running its other ability, which is Unburden. Whenever Drifblim loses its held item during a battle, its speed is going to be doubled. This won't be reflected on my overlay, but it is going to take place internally within the game. At first this ability seems good, but Drifloon and Drifblim both have okay speed stats. But before I go through all their base stats, let's talk about the first rival battle, because this one is hilarious. Today he's choosing Piplup because I figured the water starter makes the most sense. We're going to be fantastic against the fire starter, and Torterra's not very good as a ground type against a flying type Pokemon. While the Empoleon line doesn't ever get access to any ice type moves, I still figured it would be the best to go up against. After all, Drifblim, like so many other Pokemon in these Platinum challenges, does not have a good move against steel type Pokemon. And it also doesn't have a good move at the start of the game. Drifloon has to attack this thing with Constrict, one of the worst damage dealing moves in all of Pokemon. I think the only other move that gives it a run for its money is Smog. Maybe they've updated it recently and it's better now. Either way, I just don't want to be using Constrict. Look at how slow this is. Also, the Piplup cannot damage me because it only has normal type damage dealing moves. So it's just using Growl, lowering my attack and making Constrict even worse. The other move that Drifloon starts with is Minimize. This one is not allowed in my solo challenges because I'm only allowed to use evasion boosting moves once I reach level 100 as a measure of last resort. And reaching level 100 is functionally impossible today because Drifloon has the fluctuating growth rate. This one levels up very quickly in the early game and then very slowly in the late game, requiring the most amount of experience to get to level 100 out of every single growth rate. Here's an interesting piece of trivia about it. Drifloon and Drifblim are the only Pokemon introduced to the series after Generation 3 to have this growth rate. Game Freak essentially just abandoned it after its introduction in Generation 3. That does make me a bit curious as to why both Drifloon and Drifblim got it. It's really bad for solo challenges, by the way, unless you have a fantastic late game. Because by the time I get to about level 50 or 60, the growth rate is going to limit my ability to level up so much that usually just lucking through every fight from then on out is the way to play. Because of this, I need to strategize around my use of rare candies throughout this playthrough. Using them early on won't make much sense because I'm leveling up with decent speed. I want to be skipping the levels that cost the most amount of experience, so I'm going to be trying to save my candies as long as possible. Okay, time for base stats. Drifloon is surprisingly bulky. It has 90 HP, 50 attack, 34 defense, 70 speed, 60 special attack, and 44 special defense. Its typing isn't amazing defensively. It takes 2 times damage from Rock, Ghost, Electric, Ice, and Dark type moves. But it is immune to normal fighting and ground type moves and resistant to Poison, Bug, and Grass type moves. Unfortunately, the Rock weakness does mean that the early game is going to be pretty rough. At first I thought using Constrict to knock out wild Pokemon was going to be my best option to level up and get access to better moves. However, that isn't the case. I can simply walk over to the lab, get the TM for return, and then teach this to Drifloon. Even though my base friendship is 70, what most Pokemon have, return is still going to be doing far more damage than single hits from Constrict. Okay, so what other options do I have in the early game? Well, I learned Astonish, but it's not very good against the plentiful normal types. What I really want is to level up to 11 to get access to Gust, a same type attack bonus flying move that deals special damage utilizing my higher offensive stat. The only downside is that it has a base power of 40, and Drifloon is going to be stuck with this for quite some time. Through level up, it gets Focus Energy, Payback, base 50 power move, Stockpile, Spit Up, Swallow, Ominous Wind, but that comes at level 30, and it only has a base power of 60, Baton Pass, and then Shadow Ball all the way at level 38. Finally, it gets Explosion, but of course that's useless in a solo challenge. I can cover the TM and HM set now because Drifblim doesn't get access to much in addition to what Drifloon gets access to. The moves I think are most important are Thunderbolt, Psychic, and Shadow Ball. They're special moves and they complement each other decently well. Although there are some gaps, we don't have good damage against steel type Pokemon, as I mentioned before. They resist dark and ghost type moves until generation 6. So that's it for Drifloon as a Pokemon. In these first playthroughs of Pokemon Platinum, I'm always using a hardy nature, so that's why I'm not doing something that would be a little bit more beneficial. Okay, all of that out of the way, now let's talk about Roark. I had a simple hope here, which was that the fluctuating growth rate was going to give me roughly level 18 or 20 before I faced him. This should make Gust's damage pretty significant against the Geodude and the Onix because they have low special defense stats. I fought every trainer in the early game, and this brings Drifloon up to roughly level 17, so I had to do some wild training to get it to 18. On the way, I learned Payback, so my moveset now is Gust, Payback, Return, and Focus Energy. Honestly, this is a trash set for Roark. Let's see how it does. Geodude is first. I'm hoping to do at least half damage to this. I go for Gust, and it does. Alright, that's good, so I'm going to two-shot. I do get a critical hit here. Maybe it would have survived on a Sliver if I didn't, but either way, this is pretty good damage. Next, he sends in Cranidos. It doesn't have any Rock-type moves, but it does have Pursuit, which is still super effective. I wasn't sure if Gust or Payback would do more damage since they have a discrepancy between their effective powers, and Cranidos has higher physical defense over special defense. It's doing roughly 1/3 per hit. But after 2, Roark uses a potion healing the Cranidos. I am able to knock out his ace, but Drifloon is brought to 12 hit points by the time Onix comes in, and Gust is just not doing enough damage. Onix goes for Rock Throw, and it's enough to knock Drifloon out. Since I was able to knock out his Geodude and his Cranidos, it might make sense to take the experience from this battle and Blackout. However, it was taking way too long to let my Geodude HM user faint, so I end up resetting this fight, going back to the Pokemon Center, depositing all of my HM users, and then trying Roark again. One thing I can do to stack the luck in favor of Drifloon is using Focus Energy on turn 1. I like to take Blackouts in circumstances like this. I'm both gaining experience from knocking out some of his Pokemon, but I'm also gaining a chance to luck through the battle. If I get a key critical hit against, say, the Geodude and avoid damage, or against the Onix late into the fight, I could potentially get a win at a lower level. But if I black out, then I'm still gaining experience towards a higher level, which will make the fight more consistent. The reasons I don't typically do Blackout training is because each Blackout costs more time than it would to otherwise just reset the cartridge. Sometimes you have a strategy and you know it's going to work. In this case, I don't know that this strategy is going to work. Drifloon, if unlucky, might need to level up significantly more. In my second fight against Roark, I make it back to the Onix, but my health is just too low once again. In the third fight, I don't make it past the Cranidos, and in the fourth fight, it's the same scenario I had in fight 1 and 3 all over again. I ended up ditching the use of Focus Energy because then the Geodude at the beginning of the fight won't attack me, preserving some health for later in the battle. Then on Cranidos, I get a little bit lucky. Instead of it attacking with Pursuit right away, it uses Leer instead, which is going to be bad the further I go into the battle. However, I get a lucky, non-Focus Energy critical hit, knocking it out in only 2 turns. Roark can't use his potion, and the Cranidos does no damage to Drifloon. Because of this, I move on to the Onix with full health. So Gust is doing about 1/4 every turn, but the Rock Throws from Onix aren't doing that much damage even though my defense is lowered by 1 stage. Here's the real way to win though. Onix just misses Rock Throws. This gives me enough time to use as many Gusts as I need. Onix goes down and I beat the first gym leader off of a critical hit and misses from Rock Throw. This playthrough is going so well already. I'm sure it's just gonna get better from here. And it really should, because the next gym leader is a Gardenia, a person we have a type advantage against. Although the only damage dealing flying type move that Drifloon learns is Gust. Once it evolves into Drifblim, it will have access to Fly, but that's not the best flying type move out there. I wish that this line got access to something a little bit more spammable like Aerial Ace. Around Floroma Town, I pick up a bunch of berries. Now I can trigger Unburden against Commander Mars because her Zubat loves to use Toxic. I can equip a Pecha Berry, consume it, and then double my speed. This way, Drifloon actually moves first against the Purugly, and this is actually really important because the Purugly's feint attack is hitting quite hard. I didn't take time to set up Focus Energy, and with the damage that Gust is inflicting, I'm just not going to be able to outlast her ace. So I take another reset here. The solution is fairly simple. I'm level 21 right now. If I go into the grass outside the Valley Windworks, I can grind up to level 22. Here, Drifloon can learn Stockpile. I have to go through how this move has evolved over the years because some of you will be unaware of its effects if you've played a lot of Generation 3. Stockpile essentially increases a random counter called the Stockpile counter, which can then be used with moves like Swallow and and Spit Up. Swallow heals the user and Spit Up deals damage. In Generation 3, this is all that Stockpile does. It's honestly a pretty useless move because you don't want to be wasting a bunch of turns and then occasionally healing or dealing damage. It's far better to just do damage with a move, even like Gust. But in Generation 4, they changed this move so that it has an additional effect, making it much more usable. Now, whenever you use Stockpile, it will increase your defense and special defense by 1 stage. Stockpile can still only be executed 3 times, so the maximum defense and special defense boost that I can get with this move is +3. A downside to using this move is that if I use Swallow or Spit Up, the defensive boosts that I have gained by stockpiling will be taken away. However, that's not how I intend to use this move. This is just a setup move for Drifloon, and I can use it against Mars to increase my defensive stats so that Feint Attack does less damage. I'm still running a Pecha Berry here, but I set up Stockpile on the Zubat, hoping that it's not going to go for Toxic 2 turns in a row. It's choosing Bite, which is good. I set up Stockpile for a second time, then it goes for Toxic, and I retaliate with Gust. It'll take 2 turns. Luckily, Zubat chooses Bite one more time, giving me the knockout without a status condition. Time for Purugly. Hopefully, +2 is going to be enough. I go for Gust. It's doing roughly a third or a quarter. It will take 4 turns to knock out because the Purugly is holding an Oran Berry. After it heals, 1 Gust brings it to red. It uses Feint Attack. Drifloon survives with 5 hit points and knocks Purugly out. Okay, Pachirisu person. In this case, we are weak to Pachirisu's electric type attacks. Luckily, it's not targeting them all on Drifloon. Instead, it's spreading them out between Drifloon and Chansey. That ends up giving me an easy victory here, and with that, I make my way into Eterna City. Inside the gym, I was looking at Drifloon's level, which is 25, and I was starting to get worried that I was not going to level up to 30 before Fantina. I would really like to have Ominous Wind for her and not have to rely on Payback. At this point in the run, we are starting to see the fluctuating growth rates slow down. Still though, in this section of the game, Gust should be enough for Gardenia. Turtwig's first. I know that it's going to set up with Reflect, which is essentially useless when I'm spamming a special move, so I take 1 turn to set up Stockpile, reducing her damage. Then I use Gust, knock out the Turtwig over 2 turns, and move on to the Cherrim. Gust isn't able to do half here, but because I resist Grass-type moves and I have 1 Stockpile set up, she is doing very little to me every turn. I get a lucky critical hit and take care of her second Pokemon in only 2 turns. Roserade's next. Gust does more than half, but it has a Citrus Berry. It also uses Stun Spore here, paralyzing me, but that consumes my Cherry Berry, triggers Unburden, increasing my speed, but I was already faster than the Roserade by 1 point. So once again, this ability just doesn't matter. It ends up paralyzing me, which cuts my speed so that the Roserade is faster. She uses a Super Potion, and I have to knock it out slowly with the status condition. Luckily, Drifloon only misses 1 attack and then finishes off her ace. Inside the old chateau, I pick up the rare candy, the Big Pearl, which is going to be very important for this run, the Dread Plate to increase the damage of Dark-type moves in case I don't have Ominous Wind, and I'm also going to grab Substitute, but on my way I fight 1 wild Pokemon and Drifloon levels up to 27. Here it can learn both Swallow and Spit Up, but I'm not going to opt for these. I think it's better to keep my current set. Spit Up does do 100 base power of damage, which is multiplied by the Stockpile counter. However, that's just as good as a move with an effective power of 50, because it will take me 2 turns to attack with it only once. Plus, it's a normal type move, and that makes it completely useless against Fantina, who's coming up next. And I already have Return, and while it is physical, its effective power right now is 68, so over 2 turns it will inflict more damage when compared with Spit Up. Plus, after setting up with Stockpile, losing my defensive boosts to attack just doesn't seem like a good idea. Let me know if you would play a different way with this Pokemon and perhaps use these 2 unique moves. Okay, Commander Jupiter's next. This one is pretty rough. Unlike the Purugly on Mars's team, the Skuntank is a Dark type, so it gets the same type attack bonus with Night Slash. I set up to +2 before knocking out the Zubat, but it was doing a lot of damage with Bite anyway, so I have roughly half health, and Night Slash is just doing far too much. Over 2 turns, her ace knocks me out, and I had to think about what I was going to do here, because level 27 just doesn't seem like it'll be enough. Luckily, I can fight some trainers inside of the Galactic Building and level up to 28, where Drifloon evolves into Drifblim. This massively improves my base stats, especially my HP. It goes all the way from 90 up to 150. Its other base stats are 80 attack, 44 defense, 80 speed, 90 special attack, and 54 special defense. Just before we go back and face Commander Jupiter, I want to talk about Drifblim's design. Maylene, I have never really noticed this cute little cloud that's sitting on Drifblim's head. I noticed it because I saw the back sprite and I'm like, wow, that's really cute. And then I realized that my attention has always been focused on the fact that Drifblim's mouth is taped shut. I guess that's a good thing because it is a hot air balloon. We don't want the air escaping. It would probably die then. So did the evolution give me what I need to defeat Commander Jupiter? And the answer is yes, because I'm so bulky now, I can set up to +3 on the Zubat, taking very little damage. Then the Skuntank can't do that much to Drifblim. My returns are doing okay damage, enough to 3-shot, but I get lucky here with a critical hit, knocking out her ace. It feels like there's been a lot of moments like this in this playthrough. Continuing onwards, I'm going to pick up the PP up before the Wayward Cave, and I am going into this location to collect a rare candy. I need all of these for the fluctuating growth rate. There's one more before I head through Mount Coronet towards Hearthome City. On my way there, I fight Hiker Robert's Nose Pass. This thing is so annoying. Knocking out Rock-type Pokemon with my current moveset is such a chore. Just before I make it into the city, Drifblim does level up to 30, and I was hoping to get Ominous Wind here, but then I realized because I've evolved, Ominous Wind is 2 levels higher at level 32, so I still don't have it. That's unfortunate. In Hearthome City, I head by the building and pick up the Shell Bell. While this item isn't normally that good in solo challenges, I think it could have a place with a Pokemon that likes to set up defensively. Time for Amity Square. Here, I'm going to pick up the Amulet Coin. This will be incredibly important to earn as much money as is possible. I also pick up the Spooky Plate to increase the damage of Ghost-type moves. I fight some trainers inside of the gym, and I'm very close to 32 by the time I'm going up against Fantina. So I'm going to use the Spooky Plate here because I will get access to Ominous Wind after I knock out her first Pokemon. Duskull is first. Look, I said it right for once. In this case, I'm going to use Payback to knock it out. I was hoping to have enough damage, but I don't. So I'm hit by 1 Pursuit, but it does pathetic damage, and then I knock out her lead. The experience from it levels Drifblim up to 32, and I teach Ominous Wind in the place of Payback. This move now has the same type attack bonus, and the bonus from the Spooky Plate, plus it does 2 times damage against her Ghost types. So its effective power against Mismagius is 216, allowing me to one-shot. Last is Haunter. Drifblim is faster than all of her Pokemon, and so I take an easy victory over the 3rd gym leader. I mentioned the PP up that I picked up earlier because I want to use this on Ominous Wind since this move, like Ancient Power, only has 5 PP. Typically, I don't really like using PP ups on moves that aren't going to be on my set until the end of the game, but with Ominous Wind, I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to be using it for quite a while, the next 12 levels, until Drifblim reaches level 44 and learns Shadow Ball. I want to briefly draw your attention to the Mart Buy here. I only purchased 10 Super Repels. This is because I am trying to save as much money as is humanly possible for Game Corner coins. 2 of the powerful coverage moves that Drifblim gets access to are walled off behind coins in the Game Corner, or until later portions in the run. Thunderbolt and Psychic. Both cost a total of 10,000 coins. You have to play fairly intelligently and conservatively with your spending and the items that you're picking up and selling in order to get around 4,000 coins and have access to Swords Dance as soon as arriving in Veilstone City. With Drifblim, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford Psychic this early into the run. I will be picking up Thunderbolt later from the overworld. I don't need it as soon as possible. You might think that having it now would be helpful since Crasher Wake is just around the corner after Maylene, but that's not the case. And I'll mention why in 1 second. For now, I have to face the rival. I can just kind of let the Staravia set up with Double Team while I set up my own stockpiles. I think eventually I'll be able to get through its evasion boosts and use Return to knock it out. The problem with doing things this way is that then the Staravia could use Endeavor. Luckily for me, it doesn't, and I knock it out. I have roughly half health left over. I'm using Ominous Wind against the Prinplup. It's pretty good, giving me a 2-shot. The Ponyta takes 2 turns to knock out, but its best move against a ghost is Ember, and the Roselia is essentially incompetent. It always is. I haven't found a Pokemon yet where I'm really scared of this Pokemon on the rivals team. Like maybe something that's a water rock type and takes 4 times damage from grass type moves. Even then, I'm not sure. As long as I'm moving first, I'll probably just one-hit it. Passing through Salacion Town, I pick up the Roost TM. This is all just stuff that I can sell later to have more money. Then on the rainy route, we can come back to this idea of having Thunderbolt early into the run. I don't need it because I can pick up the Shockwave TM, which should give me enough of a counter against Wake's Pokemon, at least against his Gyarados. Ace Trainer Dennis, of course, the man, the myth, the legend. He's always got some really defensive Pokemon. He has Drifblim after all. It's one of the reasons I talk about him in these solo challenges, because Aftermath is a good ability when used by the AI. That said, I made a case at the the beginning of this video that Drifblim is similar to Exeggutor, the Pokemon you hate going up against, but you also hate using. That hasn't really been the case. Drifloon and Drifblim have both been decent in this solo challenge, at least until this point. Right now this run is feeling like a solid mid-tier performance. I don't think it's going to be in the B, A, or S tier, but something like C, D, or E would make sense, provided the fluctuating growth rate doesn't absolutely ruin my late game. In Veilstone City, a bunch of items to grab. This hidden calcium, a star piece, then another star piece over in one of these craters, and finally a PP up. All of this I'm gonna sell for money. Unfortunately, I don't have very much after all of this, roughly 80,000 Pokédollars, which would be enough to buy Swords Dance, but I'm not even half the way there to the Psychic TM. So my only super effective damage against the fighting types in the next gym is gonna be with Gust. This move has really overstayed its welcome. Also, I want to point out how cruel it is that they make you fight Maylene before giving you the HM for Fly. I don't think it's really a big issue with Drifblim. I think the Ghost type is just gonna carry me here. Meditite is first. Luckily it's a Psychic type, so I can use Ominous Wind here for super effective damage, and a chance for an Omni boost, but I don't get it. Machoke is next, it has Rock Tomb, and it ends up missing. That's great. After that, Lucario comes in, and its moveset is terrible against Drifblim. Its best move is Metal Claw, which is doing very little damage. So Maylene ends up being as easy as I was expecting. That's why I didn't switch off the Amulet coin. The name of the game is still earn as much money as possible. With her defeated, I can buy myself coins, in this case, a total of 4,500. Alright, almost half of the way to Psychic. And I even checked this, because I was like, there's no way that it costs 10,000 coins. Yes, it does. This TM takes so long to earn. By the way, the reason I am trying to earn Psychic is because the only other way to access it in the overworld is through Rock Climb, which requires me to have defeated Candace, and I would really like to have the Psychic type move before then. The ability to potentially drop special defense might be critical to defeating Byron, even though Psychic is resisted. And yes, I will have Shadow Ball by them, which when resisted will be better than Psychic. I'm just worried about my PP. I'm not sure I can go the distance against Byron. After all, he is built from steel to last. On my way to Pastoria City, I pick up the Aerial Ace TM, which is just a sell. And this is frustrating for two reasons. I want to get rid of Gust at this point in the run, it is basically useless. And number two, it would be great to have a move that bypasses accuracy checks for the next battle. Okay, can I show you one of the least lucky battles I've ever had? Check out this battle against the rival with his Staravia. This time, like last time, I thought I could do the strategy of setting up Stockpile, let it set up Double Team, and then just get lucky. This does not work here. I miss so many returns. I can't even emphasize to you how frustrating this was. It is slowly damaging me with Wing Attack, doing almost nothing every turn, but I just keep missing over and over and over and over again. I didn't even damage it once during this entire fight, and it didn't use Endeavor to drain my HP. It literally just chipped me down with Wing Attack. By the way, that was 10 consecutive misses using Return. In the next battle against him, I don't get that unlucky. Of course I don't. It's much easier. I knock out the Staravia over 3 hits. Then I can use Ominous Wind on the Primplup. This always gives me a chance for an Omni boost. I'm just not getting one. It doesn't matter. The rival overall is still pretty easy. I do boost myself on the Ponyta, so it makes the Roselia at the end of the battle even easier. Yay! Alright, now let's head into the gym. I need to do some prep before Crash or Wake. I'm going to fight the trainers here to gain levels, and I'm also going to teach Shockwave in the place of Gust. Now, I'm ready for the Water type specialist. Gyarados is first, Shockwave easily one-shots. I don't care about Intimidate in this case since I'm going to be using Shockwave for the majority of my damage and then Ominous Wind against the Quagsire, but it's going to come in last. First I have to go up against the Floatzel, which does have Crunch and it is faster than Drifblim. The Dark-type move deals massive damage, but not quite half. Because of that, my Shockwave is doing enough even with the Citrus Berry to 2-hit, and Drifblim pulls through with 24 hit points. I wasn't sure that this was going to be enough against the Quagsire because I'm pretty sure I'm going to 2-hit. So how much is Ominous Wind going to do to the Quagsire? Well, not quite half. At least it doesn't look like half. I think it's going to survive my next hit. It uses Water Pulse. I thought I was a goner, but I'm not. Drifblim is already dead. It's a ghost type. It hangs on with 2 hit points, uses another Ominous Wind, and check it out. It actually does enough damage. I have defeated Wake in what was an incredibly close battle. Okay, Shockwave gives me the ability to bypass accuracy checks. Maybe I should have taught this move prior to the rival fight just to knock out his Staravia. I'm starting to regret not doing that. I could have used Ominous Wind for everything else. Anyway, at least the foggy area of the map is not an issue. Over here, I'm able to pick up the Shadow Ball TM, but I'm also one level away from obtaining that move through level up. So I think I'm just going to grab it that way and keep the TM in case I need moveset flexibility later on. This is a habit that I built early on in Pokemon Yellow, where teaching over a move and then not having access to it later into the game would sometimes cause some awful problems. But in this case, I don't think I'm ever going to give up Shadow Ball. It is by far Drifblim's best attacking move. So once I learn it, it's basically here to stay, and I just wasted time picking up the TM. A small mistake. Even with the powerful same type move, my moveset is not very good. Shockwave, Shadow Ball, Return, and Stockpile. And it's really bad against Cyrus. My best move is Return against the Sneasel. It goes for Ice Punch, freezes Drifblim right away, and then punches my air balloon into Oblivion over the next 2 turns. What about Shadow Ball? No, it's not better. Return is better against the Sneasel. I should be using Return. I don't know what I'm doing. I take another loss because of that, but not because of the Sneasel. I do manage to finish it. But then Murkrow comes in, survives with a tiny amount of health, uses Drill Peck, and knocks out Drifblim. 2 losses to Cyrus 1? Really? 2? I wasn't expecting that. Usually he's not a problem. If I set up Stockpile on the first turn, then maybe I'll have enough health for later in the fight. I then use Return to knock out the Sneasel in 2 hits, move on to the Murkrow, and now I have much more health. While Shockwave can't one-shot, the Murkrow uses Feint Attack, and I survive with 48 hit points remaining. This is okay, but the Golbat does have Bite. Luckily, it's not faster than me because it hasn't evolved into Crobat yet. I use Shadow Ball, it does a lot of damage. Drifblim just barely survives Bite with 18 hit points, and while Cyrus does use a healing item, with 2 more Shadow Balls, I'm able to knock out his final Pokemon. Fluctuating growth rate, time to head back to Floroma Meadow and pick up 1 more rare candy. But before I do that, if you surf over here towards the Valley Windworks, behind the building, you can pick up the TM for Thunderbolt. So now I have a replacement for Shockwave. And since I don't really need to bypass accuracy checks, I've made it by Crash or Wake, the rival, and also the foggy area of the map. I think teaching this move in the place of Shockwave for the increased base power makes sense. Granted, I am giving up the accuracy bypassing move right before I fight the rival's Staraptor again. This time on the bridge. This is by far his most potent team in any Pokemon Platinum playthrough. But in this case, I'm not going to try and set up Stockpile. I'm just knocking the Staraptor out right away. I got a critical hit, but I still think Thunderbolt would have had enough damage without one. Next is Heracross. I don't have a flying type move here, which is regrettable, but I can use Shadow Ball to 2-shot, and I survive Night Slash with more than enough health. Empoleon comes in, I have Thunderbolt, and I'm able to knock it out in only 2 turns, and from there, his team goes downhill. He's got Roserade. It uses Toxic Spikes. Why is this Pokemon so bad? Anyways, I 2-shot, move on to the Rapidash, and then Shadow Ball 2-shots it as well. Now, things are about to get scary for this Ghost type, because there are a bunch of Steel types coming up that I have honestly no answer to. Return is essentially useless on my set right now, and I would prefer to have Psychic there just for the PP. I went back to the game corner and bought more coins, but I still don't have enough to access Psychic. So it looks like we're doing the Steel type gym without it. In this case, I have to use Shadow Ball against Black Belt Ricky's Steelix, and it is doing a decent amount of damage. I'm going to be able to knock it out in 3 hits, but he goes for Torment, which is annoying. This still allows it to be a 3-hit because Return does just enough chip damage. Then on Ace Trainer Caesar's Scissor, which I was a little bit worried about, this Pokemon is often very scary. It has Pursuit in this case, a super effective move, but I get a critical hit with Thunderbolt and 1-shot. The Magnemites on Worker Gerardo's team are really annoying. This line in general is always frustrating, but here it's even more frustrating because they are electric types, which are super effective, and they can also paralyze Drifblim. Luckily, the status condition comes late into the battle, so I still managed to win. Black Belt David. I get lucky here. I crit his first Steelix, the second one comes in, and then I crit it as well, but this one does less damage, so I have to 2-hit. Okay, I'm going to show you some of my audio notes now, which I have started recording when doing these playthroughs. It makes editing the videos so much faster because we can just look at the waveform and find interesting moments from the playthrough because I'm talking about them while I'm playing. If you're wondering why my tone is so deadpan and flat in these, the reason is I'm not actually trying to perform. I'm not trying to speak to another human. I'm just taking notes. Anyways, this is what happened in the battle against Ace Trainer Brianna. Bronzor are not an issue today. Oh, maybe they are. Aww, I hate you, Bronzor. Bronzor! Disgusting! Disgusting! Sorry So I have lost this battle. I didn't think I was going to because I had Shadow Ball. Because of this, I didn't save prior to it, so I have to black out here, which costs a lot of time. So I went back to the battle, and here's a little bit more live audio. You can tell how I was feeling. Oh, I hate these Pokemon. They're so annoying. Why? Why did they make this thing? It's like what they wanted Onix to be in Generation 1. At least this time I was able to win, so now let's take on Byron. I'm not looking forward to this one either. Up first is Magneton. I'm going to have to use Shadow Ball here, and it is able to 2-hit, just barely though. I have my special defense lowered by 2 stages with Metal Sound, and then I move on to his second Pokemon, which he chooses to be Bastiodon. It has Stone Edge, which is definitely the move I was most worried about, but I'm doing decent damage with Thunderbolt, and I think I can survive at least 1 hit from the physical move. My special defense is absolutely trashed right now, but the Bastiodon's Metal Burst won't do very much anyway. I was feeling good here. Thunderbolt's doing okay damage. Even if he heals, I should be able to knock out his ace and move on to the Steelix at very least. But then he uses Stone Edge, which gets a critical hit and completely deletes Drifblim. Now, in retrospect, I don't think this is really the best choice, but I go back and I find a bunch of items, sell them, purchase coins, and then get myself the Psychic TM, which I teach in the place of return. This doesn't make a ton of sense because it's not that good against Byron. I was taking many turns to knock out his Pokemon. Overall here, I'm going to need to do something else to win. I'm not having luck at level 47. So after 2 more losses, I end up deciding to use some rare candies. I have a total of 9 right now, which is roughly half of the total that you get in Pokemon Platinum. I'm going to use them to level up to level 56 before trying again. In this case, I'm going to set up with Stockpile first to raise my defensive stats, then I'll take less damage throughout the remainder of the battle because it is going to be a long fight. Stone Edge is actually not the scariest move here. It ends up being Metal Burst because it does 1.5 times the amount of damage that was just taken by Bastiodon. I get a critical hit, and then it uses Metal Burst, reflecting so much damage back. Luckily, Drifblim has a huge HP stat, so I'm able to knock out the Bastiodon for the first time and move on to the Steelix. It, instead of going for Ice Fang, just sets up with Sandstorm and gives me a 2-shot using Shadow Ball. Okay, so at the higher level, Byron ended up being very easy, but maybe the use of all of these rare candies is going to come back to bite me later. With access to Psychic, the commander's teams are really simple. I have Thunderbolt for the Golbat, Shadow Ball for the Bronzor. This one is actually a 1-hit, which is so satisfying. Sweet revenge. Toxicroak is obviously deleted by Psychic, and then for the Purugly, I can use Thunderbolt. It's not ideal. I get put to sleep here, and she actually pushes Drifblim really close to the limit. Luckily, it wakes up with the nicest amount of health and knocks out the Purugly. Ace Trainer Dalton is not going to be able to inflict static or flame body on my Pokemon today because I am not making contact with any of my moves. It is so satisfying. I journey through the blizzard all the way to Snowpoint City, where I take on Candace. My type matchups here are not ideal. I'm banking on the fact that the Sneasel is just not a very good lead Pokemon. If she had Weavile, this would be a different story. I use Thunderbolt, and I'm able to knock it out in 2 turns. Then Frostlass comes in second, which is perfect. It's not getting Snowcloak set up by the Abomasnow's Snow Warning right before. That is so many snows in a single sentence, oh my gosh. I one-shot the Frostlass using Shadow Ball, then she sends in her incompetent Pokemon. Abomasnow first, it sets up Snow Warning, but Shadow Ball 2 shots, and it only uses Water Pulse. I didn't even know it had that move. After that, Piloswine comes in. This one does have Stone Edge, but don't worry, it's incompetent. Shadow Ball just 1-shots, and with that, Candace is defeated. In the Veilstone Galactic building, I go out of my way to pick up 1 extra rare candy. This is for the late game, especially since I had to use so many prior to Byron. At the end of this area, Cyrus is waiting for me. And this battle is actually quite scary when using Drifblim. My speed stat right now is 131, and the Crobat has 145, so it's going to be able to move first. It has Bite, which is not a great move, but it is still super effective. I can one-shot the Honchkrow using Thunderbolt, and I have full health left over for the Crobat. I thought I was going to win here. You probably think I'm going to win here. It looks like a runaway victory. After all, I'm level 59. His Crobat is only level 44, but it's still faster, meaning it can use Supersonic, the move with 55% accuracy, confuse Drifblim, and then I get completely awful luck. Drifblim hits itself over and over again. And that's a loss to Cyrus too. Okay, it's not as bad as Executor, but it is starting to frustrate me. I'm able to win the next fight because the Crobat does not use Supersonic right away. However, it does survive a hit and then try Supersonic. Luckily this time it misses. The multi-battle at the top of Mount Coronet isn't much of an issue for Drifblim. Its typing is pretty good here and it's very bulky. I didn't even take time to set up with Stockpile. With them out of the way, I head into the Distortion world. Now, the battle against Cyrus is one that I have been fearing throughout this entire run. He is typically extremely challenging in here, and I have a type disadvantage against most of his team members. When I first sat down to do this challenge, I really thought this was going to be the battle where I'd need to use my rare candies. I was hoping I could put them all off until this moment and not have to use them at Byron, but that wasn't the case. So let's see. How is Cyrus? First is Houndoom. My best move here is Thunderbolt, which is going to knock out his lead in 2 shots, and Drifblim takes roughly 1/3 in damage from Dark Pulse before I move on to his second Pokemon, which is Weavile. It is speed tied with Drifblim. That could be a significant problem, especially because Night Slash is doing massive damage, and I can't do very much to it. Just over half, but as his ace, it does have a Citrus Berry. I take a quick loss here, and I decided to use my rare candies. I've collected 7 more, so using them brings Drifblim up to level 68, over 3 more damage rounding thresholds. Let's talk about different ways to die against Cyrus. Number 1, get hit by Will-O-Wisp. This, at first, didn't seem like an immediate loss to me. I figured I can just knock out his Pokemon and take a small amount of damage every turn. I get fairly far into the fight, but by the time I'm against the Gyarados, I realized I don't have enough health. Even though I would probably one-shot the Crobat, the burn damage is just too much. Another way to lose is the Houndoom getting a critical hit. That did way too much damage, plus I'm already burned. If the Houndoom is always going for Will-O-Wisp right away, I'm probably not going to be able to win. But it's not. Sometimes it's going for Dark Pulse, giving me time to set up with Stockpile. I pushed things here. I go for 2 turns of setup here, and then I start going for Thunderbolt to knock it out. This takes 2 turns, and it does not use Will-O-Wisp. So now Drifblim has roughly half health remaining. Weavile is next, and it's going to get 1 hit in because I can't one-shot. It goes for Ice Punch, taking me down to 72 health, and then my next hit does not knock it out, so it gets in a second Ice Punch. Drifblim survives on 12 hit points, and Cyrus uses a healing item, a full restore, bringing Weavile back to full health. But Thunderbolt has deleted his Citrus Berry, so I'm able to 2-shot from here. Honchkrow, Gyarados, and Crobat all do not have high priority moves, and with my speed of 155, I am 4 points faster than the Crobat, allowing me to sweep through his team with Thunderbolt. Okay, did you think that Cyrus was bad? Well, Volkner is next. Get ready. Did you think that was sarcasm? It's not sarcasm. Volkner is absolutely awful for Drifblim. I can't one-shot the Jolteon, so it's able to paralyze me, and that leads to my first loss. Okay, this is easy, right? Just a Cherry Berry like all the other Pokemon that I've used. Then I can play around the Jolteon and maybe set up for 1 turn. This doesn't really work out that well, because Stockpile will not give me more damage, so Shadow Ball is still gonna 2-shot. This means he will paralyze me on the next turn again using Thunder Wave. I thought maybe with higher defensive stats, I could just muscle my way through this fight despite the status condition, but that ends up not being the case. I make it to the Electivire, but I'm paralyzed with 21 hit points and it has Thunder Punch, so that's a second loss. What about the Shell Bell? Maybe I set up with Stockpile, use this item that I said could be useful in the past, but no, I'm taking too much damage from Jolteon then, which is using Charge Beam for damage, raising its special attack every time it attacks. This is really bad. Technically it's not every time, it's only 70% of the time, but it's still so frequent. I end up making it through the Raichu, but then the Luxray stops me, so that's a third loss. Okay, so Drifblim is slowly transforming into Executor. While that Pokemon is awful in the early game of Pokemon Yellow, this Pokemon apparently is awful in the late game of Pokemon Platinum. I tried setting up again using a Citrus Berry for the Jolteon because I didn't have enough health in previous fights. Maybe if I just heal, it'll be fine, and the answer is no, it won't be fine. I'm still just taking too much damage by moves like Thunder Fang from the Luxray, and Paralysis is also preventing many turns. The status condition is what's making this so bad. I tried 1 more time with Stockpile, but then I realized this is not the strategy. What I should be doing is knocking out the Jolteon as soon as possible. I can use the Cherry Berry here because I'm not able to one-shot. That prevents paralysis. Then on the Raichu, which does no Charge Beam, I can set up my Stockpiles, preventing damage for the remainder of the fight. This will work if the Raichu isn't able to charge up its special attack too significantly. And things are going according to plan. I knock out the Raichu, move on to the Luxray, it chooses Thunder Fang, gets a critical hit, and knocks out Drifblim. Okay, deep breaths. This is going to be fine. I know this strategy will work. On my next attempt implementing it, I'm able to knock out the Raichu. This time the Luxray does not crit me and I move on to the Electivire. I have better health remaining, but it's still not a lot. Shadow Ball does more than half. Electivire's Thunder Punch brings Drifblim down to 45 HP, and then I knock out the Electric Specialist's final Pokemon. So I learned something that should have been obvious. If you're using a flying type Pokemon that doesn't have particularly good offensive stats and doesn't have particularly good defensive stats, actually kind of trash tier defensive stats in this case, then Volkner is going to be a problem. I think I can sum this up in one generality, that Volkner is always bad unless you're using a flying type. Now normally I make jokes about Volkner, and normally I make jokes about this Blissey girl and how long it takes to knock out her Pokemon, because that's the meme for Generation 4. The health bar depleting slowly after Heracross uses close combat against a Blissey. In this case though, the health bar is not depleting slowly, it's just not depleting very much. I was hoping that Psychic would lower the special defense of Blissey, giving me more damage every turn, but this doesn't happen, because unlike in Generation 1 where that's a 33% chance, in Generation 2 and on, it's only a 10% chance, and I only have 10 uses of Psychic. Because of this, I get caught in the most awful battle. I'm using Thunderbolt with no chance of knocking the Blissey out unless I get critical hits. It can't do damage to me because I'm a ghost type, so it's just spamming Soft Boiled and Light Screen over and over again, which is really annoying. I thought I might have to go out and use the move reminder, teach a different move like something physical, come back in and then defeat the Blissey. However, that's not actually the case. There's a hope to win here with Struggle, but I don't even need to do that. I deplete all my PP of Psychic, Thunderbolt, and then Stockpile, and as I'm using up the last of Shadow Ball's PP, the Blissey knocks itself out with Struggle. Because of this, I'm able to use Shadow Ball against the following Glalie and Magnezone and defeat her on my first attempt, although this fight took so long. It was a total of 2 minutes and 7 seconds of real time in one battle, which is running at 4 times speed. This battle would have been just shy of 9 minutes on 1 times speed. Okay, Victory Road, one more trainer, Psychic Valencia. I rarely talk about her. The reason I'm mentioning her is because Sucker Punch does ridiculous damage. The Absol takes Drifblim down to red health before the Dusknoir. Luckily, this thing is terrible, it's really slow, so I'm able to knock it out fairly quickly. Just like the Blissey in Victory Road, the rival's Snorlax is problematic. We're skipping through all the other Pokemon on his team because they're really irrelevant. In this case, I just can't do enough damage to 3-shot, so it consistently uses rest to heal to full health. What I was hoping for once again is a special defense drop from Psychic so that Thunderbolt would do more damage per hit, but I just don't get it. I end up running out of Psychic and Thunderbolt PP, and getting to this point in the battle is fast enough, so I just decided to reset and try the entire thing again. There is a second way to win this battle. I can also get a critical hit when attacking the Snorlax, and that's what happens in this fight. I knock it out right before I run out of PP on Thunderbolt. I only have 1 usage of the move left. After that, the rival only has Rapidash remaining, and it's easy to take care of. Now, it's time for Drifblim to face the Elite Four. Aaron is first. He's honestly not very good. Like, the Drapion is technically a dark type, but it doesn't have any dark type moves. X Scissor, Cross Poison, Ice Fang, and Aerial Ace. Ice Fang is technically super effective, but I set up Stockpile early into the fight, so I'm not really that worried about it. It's doing very little damage. The Scissor, on the other hand, has Night Slash, which gets a critical hit, but it's still not enough to knock out Drifblim. Of course, I'm over-leveled, but the fluctuating growth rate has held me back. Drifblim is level 72 right now, where a lot of other Pokemon are 80 to 84 by this point in the game. Moving on to Bertha, here I set up Stockpile at the beginning of the fight. I thought the Whiscash wasn't going to do very much damage, but I'm always surprised how much this thing can do, at least recently. After that, I take care of it. Then I have special moves against both the Golem and the Rhyperior, and their special defense stats are not good. I knock them both out in a single hit. Of course, the Gliscor and the Hippowdon are able to survive, but as a flying type, I was never really that scared of Bertha anyway. Time for Flint. Stockpile right away. He doesn't have Will-O-Wisp on the Houndoom. Then I can just 2-shot pretty much everything. At least that's what I was hoping for. The Magmortar ends up doing massive damage to Drifblim. It attacks twice with Flamethrower, and I'm left with red health by the time I knock it out. Here's the thing. I have super effective damage for the Infernape with Psychic, so I can 1-shot, and the final Flareon and Rapidash are both just not very good. However, the Flareon does go for Overheat. I thought that was it, but it's not, because it misses. As a result, I knock it out, move on to the Rapidash, and I get a critical hit against it, mirroring the plentiful critical hits that Drifblim got in the early game. So I definitely lucked through this flint fight. If I did it multiple times, I might lose more often than I would like to admit. From here though, things get easier. Lucian is last. Of course, Shadow Ball is super effective, so I'm able to sweep through his team. I used rare candies before this fight, so that's why my Drifblim is a higher level now. But if you think it's over leveled, and you think that the end of the game is going to be simple like it usually is in Pokemon Platinum, well, then you would be wrong, because Cynthia was ready to cause problems. Spiritomb is first, and that's an issue for Drifblim. If I want to set up with Stockpile, then I don't really have that much time against it because Shadow Ball is doing a lot of damage to me. You'll notice here that I've taught Charge Beam in the place of Thunderbolt, because I think increasing my special attack stat is going to be the only way to win, other than running a recovery move and just playing a slow, stally battle. But I didn't purchase Rest because I spent all of my money buying the Psychic TM. My idea here was set up with Stockpile, then use Charge Beam to max out my special attack, and from there I should be able to sweep through the rest of Cynthia's team. However, it ends up not being the case. I knock out the Spiritomb and I have very low health left over because it's been hitting hard the entire battle. Then Milotic comes in next, and I only have special moves. It has Mirror Coat, so it can reflect back a massive amount of damage and finish off Drifblim. Unless I'm able to one-shot or it uses a different move like Ice Beam, I'm not going to get by it. Sometimes things just fall apart at the Spiritomb. It gets a lucky critical hit with Dark Pulse, and that ends in a loss. I don't even make it to the Milotic in my second battle. I thought maybe I should just attack the Spiritomb right away and not set up Stockpile, but then it's doing tons of damage to me anyway, and by the time I knock it out I only have +2 for the Milotic, which is not enough to take care of it in a single hit. Although it does go for Ice Beam, so I know it's not always choosing Mirror Coat, which is a really good piece of information to have. Drifblim survives on 2 hit points, I knock out the Milotic, go up to +3 special attack, and then Cynthia sends in Togekiss. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this one now. I can use Charge Beam again for super effective damage. It does slightly more than Psychic, but the Togekiss survives on a sliver. And yeah, it uses Water Pulse, and that's that for Drifblim. Another loss. I really want my favorite move right now. I want Rest. If I could teach that in the place of Psychic, this whole battle would be so much easier. But I'm stuck trying to make it through with Stockpile. I really don't want to black out. That's going to waste far more time than just getting a little bit lucky here. But she's the one getting lucky with crits from her Spiritomb, so I take another reset. Now I'm using the Shell Bell to hopefully gain back a little bit of health every turn. This combos well with Stockpile, and it will hopefully give me the small amount that I need to survive. Although, it's not working out very well. I take out the Spiritomb, and my Drifblim only has 63 health remaining when Milotic comes in. I'm only at +2. I was feeling pretty hopeless here, but the Milotic does use Ice Beam, and then it freezes Drifblim. However, the Blimp thaws out right away, uses another Charge Beam, and knocks Milotic out, going up to +4 special attack, which is enough to one-shot the following Togekiss. Lucario is next. Psychic easily one-shots the fighting type, then Garchomp comes in. For this one, I'm going to be using Shadow Ball. It obliterates her ace, and last is Roserade, the Pokemon I've been making fun of this entire video. Don't worry, it's still bad. Drifblim completes the game with a time of 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 10 seconds. It had a total of 28 faults consisting of 24 resets and 4 blackouts. It beat the game at level 77 with a game time of 8 hours and 12 minutes. Okay, this wasn't as bad as Executor. It's not a super disappointing first playthrough, but it's also not an excellent result. It's just middle of the pack. Today it earns itself a placement in the D tier, just behind another flying type Crobat. I just recently played it, so if you want to check out that video, it's over here. If you support me on YouTube memberships or through Patreon, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.